If you have ever felt that being a nice, helpful neighbor when talking to the police would keep you safe, you might be about to make a very sad and very expensive mistake. Most people do not end up in trouble because they actually did something wrong. Instead, they find themselves in handcuffs because they chose to talk too much. I have personally seen how a quick 2-minute chat with an officer can turn into a full search of a car, a set of cold metal handcuffs, and a date to see a judge. All of this happens because someone answered a single question they did not have to answer. I am someone who cares deeply about your rights, and today I want to walk you through every little trick that officers use to get you talking, explaining things, and giving them permission to search your things. I also want to give you the exact and gentle words you can use to protect yourself so you do not accidentally help someone build a case against you. If you have ever been pulled over on the side of the road, it is so important to understand that officers have a whole bag of tricks they use. These tricks are designed to get you chatting and eventually giving them the okay to look through your car. First, it is important to realize that an officer might pull you over for a very tiny reason, even if they are actually curious about something much bigger. For instance, they might stop you because of a light that is out on the back of your car, or because you did not come to a full, complete stop at a sign, or maybe they think your license plate is not easy to read. But the real reason for stopping you might be that they want to see if you are involved in a much more serious problem. These are often called pretext stops. Back in 1996, the highest court in our land looked at a case called Wren versus United States. They decided that a traffic stop is perfectly okay under our laws as long as the officer has a good reason to believe a small traffic rule was broken. Even if the officer's real heart was set on looking into something else, this means a tiny mistake can open the door to many questions, orders, and searches. So when you see those lights behind you, please do not think you can just be extra friendly to get out of it. The officer might be using that tiny mistake as a way to trick you into saying something that starts a much bigger investigation. One of the very first trick questions you will hear is, "Do you know why I stopped you today?" Most of us want to be honest, so we might say something like, "Was I driving a little too fast?" Or, "Did I miss that stop sign back there?" But if you admit you did something wrong, the officer no longer has to prove it. You just gave them the evidence they needed to give you a ticket or something even worse. In 1984, there was a case called Berkmer versus McCarty. The court said that the usual questions asked on the side of the road during a normal stop are not the same as being in a high-pressure interrogation room. This means officers can ask you questions and use your answers against you, even if they have not read you your rights yet. Never give them anything they can use to hurt you. So, when they ask if you know why they stopped you, simply say, "No, I do not." It is a polite answer, but it gives them zero information. Another common question they love to use is asking where you're coming from or where you're going. This is not just a friendly chat to pass the time. By answering, you are giving the officer a timeline of your night. They can then test this timeline against other things they find or see if your story matches up perfectly. If you say, "I just left a friend's house," they will start asking what you were doing there, or if there were any substances like alcohol or drugs around. It is much better if you do not tell the story of your whole night. Instead, you can kindly say, "Officer, with all due respect, I would prefer not to answer that question." Now, what if the officer gets a bit more firm and asks you to step out of your car? Many people think, "Wait, I have a right to stay in my car." But sadly, that is not the case. Because of a court case called Pennsylvania versus Mims, officers are allowed to tell you to get out of the vehicle for their own safety. They can do this even if they do not really think you have done anything wrong. If you say no to this order, they might even pull you out and arrest you for not following instructions. However, once you are standing outside, be very careful. They might say you look nervous, or they might try to talk to your passengers separately to see if your stories match. They might also take a slow look around the car to see if they can spot anything through the windows. If you are told to get out, protect yourself by locking your doors as you exit and clearly saying that you do not give them permission to search. If you ever feel like you're being held there too long, you can simply ask, "Officer, am I being detained?" If they do not give you a straight answer, ask, "Am I free to go?" If they say they have no reason to keep you, then you should leave calmly. But if they say you are being held, now you know where you stand. At that point, you should use your right to stay silent and tell them you will not say another word without your lawyer there with you. How do you know for sure if you are being held? In a case called United States versus Menhal, the court said a person is held when a normal person in that same situation would not feel like they were free to just walk away. This rule is the reason why asking, "Am I free to go?" is so powerful. Officers hope you do not ask it because they want to keep the conversation going to find something against you. If they are being confusing and do not say you are free to leave, it is time to stop talking and wait for a lawyer. Now, let's talk about how officers try to look through your personal belongings. The most common trick is a very casual request, like, "Do you mind if I take a quick look inside?" They will not tell you that you have every right to say no. Cases like Schnickloth versus Buamonte and United States versus Drayton Both say that if you say yes voluntarily, the officer does not need a warrant. They also said officers do not have to warn you that you can refuse. Once you say yes, it is very hard to fight that in court later. This is why when they start that small talk and ask to look around, you must look them in the eye and say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Remember, if they do not have a warrant, you have the right to say no to a search of your property. Some people find this out in a very painful way. In 2018, a woman in Arizona gave permission for a search, and the officers found 55 pounds of marijuana in her trunk. Because she said yes to the search, that evidence was used against her. Sometimes they do not ask nicely. They give what sounds like an order. They might say, "Pop the trunk." This sounds like something you have to do, but it is often just a trick. They are trained to sound like they have all the power so that you will just follow along without thinking. If you just do what they say because you feel pressured, the law will often see that as you giving permission. Again, look at the officer and say, "Officer, I do not consent to a search." What if they try to pressure you by saying they smell something like alcohol or weed? Be on your guard. This is another way to make you feel like you have to let them look. In the past, the smell was enough of a reason for a search, but things are changing in many places. For example, the Illinois Supreme Court recently said that the smell of marijuana by itself is not enough of a reason to search a car because having some is now legal in many cases, and a smell doesn't always mean a crime is happening. Regardless, do not argue with them about it. Just stay firm and say, "Officer, I do not consent to a search." This leads to another trick where they might threaten to go get a warrant if you do not help them. Often, this is just a bluff. They are trying to get you to give up your rights so they do not have to do the hard work of meeting legal standards. If they threaten you with a warrant, just say again, "Officer, I do not consent to search." What if they tell a lie and say they already have a warrant? According to a case called Bumper versus North Carolina, if you only let them in because they lied about having a warrant, that is not real permission. That is just you following an order that turned out to be fake. The courts take this kind of lying very seriously. Now, what about when they want to pat you down to see if you have weapons? They will often ask if they can do this for their own safety. In the case of Terry versus Ohio, the court said an officer can stop someone and feel their outer clothing for weapons if they have a very good reason to think the person is dangerous and armed. But here's the catch. If they feel something that is clearly not a weapon but is illegal, they can still take it and use it against you under the plain view rule from that same case. Officers will almost always ask for your permission first because they know the legal rules for a pat-down are very tricky. If you say yes, you make it much harder to argue about it later. You might not be able to stop them from doing it if they are determined, but you should always say, "I refuse consent to a search." This lets the court know you are not just going along with it. And remember, they are only supposed to feel your outer clothes. If they go into your pockets or under your clothes without a very good reason, you can fight that later. What if you stand your ground and then they say they are bringing out a drug-sniffing dog? Most courts say a trained dog sniffing around the outside of your car is not a full search. However, in 2015, the Supreme Court ruled in a case called Rodriguez versus United States that officers cannot make you wait around longer than a normal stop just to let a dog arrive. They cannot drag their feet if they do not have a real reason to suspect a crime, but that doesn't stop them from trying to stall. They might walk slowly around your car, pretending to look at your lights, or ask you many questions that have nothing to do with why you were stopped. They might even claim they are still checking things while they wait for the dog. If you feel this is happening, remember your rights. You do not have to answer questions. You have the right to ask for a lawyer. And most importantly, you should ask, "Officer, am I being detained or am I free to go?" By asking this, you are starting a clock. If they keep you there for an unreasonable amount of time without a good reason, a judge might throw out whatever the dog finds. Now, what if they see you holding your cell phone? They might ask, "Mind if I take a quick look at your phone?" In a case called Riley versus California, the Supreme Court was very clear. Our phones are full of our most private information, and officers almost always need a warrant to look inside them. But they will still try the old trick of saying, "Just unlock it for me and we can get this all cleared up." Do not fall for it. They are hoping you will give them access to things they would normally need a judge's permission to see. Never unlock your phone for them. And a very important tip, do not use your fingerprint or your face to unlock your phone. Some courts have said that officers can physically force you to put your finger on the sensor or hold the phone up to your face. But they cannot force you to give up a secret passcode that is in your head. So use a password and do not unlock it. These tricks do not just happen on the road, they happen at your front door too. The most classic trick is called the knock and talk. An officer will knock on your door and say they are just asking neighbors a few questions about something they heard. They want to get a look inside your home without a warrant. The Supreme Court in Florida versus Jardines said that while officers have a right to knock on a door like anyone else, they cannot bring a drug dog onto your porch to sniff around without a warrant. Under the law, you do not even have to open the door when the police knock. Your home is your castle, and you can choose to ignore them unless they have a warrant. If they say they have one, ask them to show it to you through a window so you can see the judge's signature. If they don't have one, you can keep the door closed and stay silent. Another trick is when they say they're just going to look around the outside of your house. Your Fourth Amendment rights protect the area right around your home, which is called the curtilage. A case called Payton versus New York says officers need a warrant to come into your home or search that private area right around it. They cannot just walk into your backyard whenever they feel like it. The trick of saying they are just looking around is often a way to get you to come outside so they can confront you. Stay inside. Talk through the door. Say, "Officer, I do not consent to a search. Do you have a warrant?" Sometimes they might say they are there for a welfare check because they are worried about you. While the court in Kigula versus Stroh looked at this, they said officers cannot use the excuse of being a helper to get into your home unless there is a real immediate emergency. This is called the emergency aid doctrine. If they truly think someone is in danger right that second, they might try to come in. To stop this trick, go to a window where they can see you. Show them you are perfectly fine. Tell them, "Officer, I'm safe and healthy. There's no emergency here. I do not consent to a search." Then walk away. What if you are just walking down the street and an officer comes up to chat? They might say, "Hey, you aren't in any trouble. I just want to talk for a second." Many people think that because they aren't being arrested, what they say doesn't count. This is a big mistake. Anything you say in a friendly chat can be used against you in court. Officers only have to read you your Miranda rights when you are actually being held and interrogated. They hope you do not know this. They hope you will just volunteer information that they can later twist to make you look guilty. Do the right thing for yourself. Look at them and say, "Officer, I am using my right to stay silent, and I will not answer any questions without my lawyer." That is when they might try another trick. They might say, "Why don't you just come down to the station so we can clear all this up?" Going to the station to clear things up is one of the most dangerous things you can do. It usually means they already think you did something, and they want to get you into a room where you are alone and they can pressure you. Even if you find yourself in a spot where you cannot leave, remember these words. "I exercise my right to remain silent, and I will not answer a question unless my attorney is present." But you must actually say these words out loud. In a case called Burgess versus Tompkins, the Supreme Court said your right to stay silent only works if you clearly say you're using it. If you just stay quiet without saying why, that silence can sometimes be used against you. Also, in Davis versus United States, the court said officers do not have to stop asking questions unless you clearly say you want a lawyer. Never say, "I think I might need a lawyer." That is not clear enough. Say, "Officer, I am using my right to remain silent, and I will not speak until my lawyer is here." Once you say that, stop talking. Even if you keep chatting after asking for a lawyer, they can still use those new words against you. There's no such thing as being off the record with an officer. You also have to watch out for the good cop, bad cop routine. One officer acts mean and scary, threatening you with the worst possible future. Then, a nice officer comes in, offers you a drink, and acts like your best friend who wants to help you. This is a very old trick to make you feel like you have a friend in the room. But remember, they are both on the same team. In Colorado versus Connolly, the court said this kind of psychological pressure is legal as long as it isn't outright physical force or extreme coercion. The biggest thing to remember is that officers are allowed to lie to you. If you lie to them, you can be in big trouble for giving a false report. But they can tell you your fingerprints were found when they weren't. They can tell you your friend already blamed you. A man named Ted Bradford spent over 10 years in prison because he believed a lie the police told him about DNA evidence and got so scared he confessed to something he never did. Often, people try to explain away fake evidence, but in doing so, they admit they were at the scene of a crime. This makes them a suspect. Officers lie because they know it gets people talking. They also love to make fake promises. They might tell you that you can go home if you just tell them what they want to hear, but officers are not the ones who decide if you go home. That is up to a judge or a prosecutor. Never believe a promise made by an officer in an interrogation room. Why do they do all this? Because they know how humans work. They know we want to be helpful and polite. They hope you believe the old saying that innocent people have nothing to hide. But our Constitution says that standing up for your rights does not make you look guilty. It is actually the smartest way to stay safe. An officer's job is to gather evidence, not to be your friend. The safest thing you can ever say is, "Officer, I am using my right to stay silent. I do not give permission for any searches, and I will not answer any questions without my lawyer." Speaking of tricks, there are even more things they try when they suspect someone of driving while impaired. Please take a look at our other guide, where we talk about 5 more tricks used during those stops and how you can protect yourself and your family. We are here to help you understand these complex things in a way that makes sense for your everyday life. Your rights are there to protect you, and knowing how to use them with kindness and firmness is the best way to ensure you get home safely to the people who love you. It can be scary when you see those flashing lights or hear a knock at the door, but if you remember to stay calm, stay polite, and stay silent until you have professional help, you are doing exactly what our law is intended for you to do. You do not have to be a legal expert to protect your future. You just have to remember that your words are powerful, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is choose not to use them at all. We hope this guide has made you feel a little more confident and a little less worried about how to handle these moments. Always remember that you are not alone, and there are people who care about making sure you are treated fairly and with the respect you deserve as a human being. Taking the time to learn these things today could truly be the most important thing you do for yourself and your loved ones. Stay safe, stay informed, and always remember to stand firm in the rights that were given to you to keep your life and your freedom protected from mistakes and tricks. It is okay to be nervous, but it is better to be prepared. By following these simple steps, you are taking control of your situation and making sure that your side of the story is handled correctly from the very beginning. Thank you for spending this time with us today and for caring enough about your own well-being to learn these vital lessons. We believe that everyone deserves to know how to protect themselves, and we are honored to share this information with you in a way that is easy to understand and use whenever you might need it most. Keep these words in your heart and in your mind, and you will be ready for whatever comes your way. Protecting yourself is not about being difficult. It is about being wise and looking out for your own future. You have the strength to stand up for yourself, and we are here to support you every step of the way as you navigate these challenges with grace and knowledge.